Hey, hi everybody. For those new to my channel, my name is Karani. Thank you for tuning in. For those that have been here a while, thanks for coming back. And for those hate watching, I appreciate you tuning in. I was thinking about some stuff for the last little while because nothing really brings out the best and worst of people than the holidays, I find. And, you know, you can't help but reflect on different things. And I've talked to a lot of people and heard their stories. And there's a lot of good and bad that comes with the holidays, right? Putting up with things you might not want to put up with. And you might do that for a loved one or whatever, right? Old beefs find a new light, right? But all that stuff aside, I'm really curious as to the whys. Now, when I was going to school to be a counselor, and I did, plus I got a degree. When I was going to school to be a counselor, they used to say there's no why questions. You never ask why, right? You get them to tell you without actually saying the word why, right? It's a bad word. And I can understand that when you're dealing with certain things, but then the level I'm looking at it now, why isn't there a lot? Like, why is this happening like it is? And there's usually more than one answers to that, especially within the dynamic of your family, let's say, or your work environment, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes things just don't mesh, and sometimes people just don't get along. And sometimes an age gap is just too much of a gap to overcome, and sometimes people are just full of shit, right? Things happen in life. But the one thing that I really want to focus on is, a long time ago, I had this thought in my head. And I was talking to a couple of friends about it this week, and they're kind of like, you know, it makes a lot of sense. Everyone talks about narcissist. Oh, that person's a narcissist. Oh, that's narcissism on full display. Do you know what narcissism is? Because look, there's a difference, man. There's the know-it-all, loudmouth kind of person. Maybe it's me. I don't know. Right? There's those kinds of people. Then there's the other people that not only are they right, but you have to be wrong. And you have to celebrate how wrong you are in comparison to how right they are. Right? The people that you need to lift up and carry around and sing and you know, whatever, right? Kiss a ring, whatever, however colorful phrase you want to put it. But there's a level of respect in their mind that they're not getting, and they need to have that in order for things to go, right? So I'm not talking about the abnormal personality expressions or narcissistic disorders. I'm just talking about people in general. Because number one, as I made it clear before, an unemployable counselor. Although I did get some cold calls this week that I think hopefully could work in my favor. You have those narcissistic type things, right? What I'm looking at is just how people react in situations that occur. How do you react to them? What are the triggers for those situations? And how hard it is to let stuff go when you don't want to let it go. Because that's what it is, man. A lot of us get stuck in things, right? And I love the term Machiavellism. That's pretty cool because it's, you know, it's that shady underhanded practice that's designed for someone to get kudos even when they don't deserve it. That's another thing too about narcissism. If people have traits of that, and we all have traits of that. We all have traits of everything. Let's first be upfront about that, right? Because narcissism is, I even called it up, just so I can give you an exact quote. Narcissism is a self-centered personality style characterized as having an excessive preoccupation with oneself and one's own needs, often at the expense of others. Okay? I like it this way too. If you're a big movie buff out there, I always thought Ed Norton from Fight Club and The Incredible Hulk and, you know, Primal Fear, all those, he's a great actor. But you hear him talk and all he talks about is himself, and it's just like, Jesus, this guy won't, But then you talk to Bruce Willis, and Bruce Willis is kind of sly, makes the comments, gets the job done. Why do you prefer that over the other? If you do, what is it about the cockiness factor that's different from someone just being arrogant, right? You can work with someone that's cocky because you know what, they might be kind of funny. They can get stuff done, and you know at the end, okay, they're gonna do the right thing. But when they're that arrogant, there's always that doubt that they will do the right thing. And chances are they'll do things to make themselves look good no matter the situation and no matter who gets hurt. And I look at narcissism, the traits in people, as kind of that same way. It's even like this little thing here we do. If you're sitting here watching this thinking, oh, they're taking shots at me. Why, number one, would that happen? Two, who are you? Who am I? Right? Do I even know you? It goes back to what I said. If you're hate watching this just to get a rise out of it, I'm glad that your blood pressure still works. But then you're missing the point of what all this is. Because this isn't about any one in particular thing. This isn't about any one type of person. This is about people in the real world living with situations that they have to deal with, that there isn't a clear-cut manner to go through it all. Okay? I've been working for over 30 years, right? Basically since I left school at the age of 17. Been working pretty much nonstop. Right? And in that time frame, we've all had experiences where people have talked bad about someone else, just to talk bad about them, take credit for something that other people have done, just to take credit for it. Something bad happens, be scared that, oh no, what if they find out you and I had coffee once, right? All these things aren't about the person, the place, the job, whatever. It's about the individual. The individual who's worried about this. Oh no, I'm not going to be looked in this kind of light. Okay? Right? And I mean, you got to ask yourself, why is that the case? Why is that important? Now, we can go into the addiction aspect, right? Especially if someone's in heavy addiction, or maybe growing up, they had spouses or parents, partners, right? Maybe they were in abusive relationships. Maybe their parents were users, right? There's a term called child of alcoholics, COA, where you grow up, and that's where like the family roles come into play, right? There's like the hero, the mascot, the lost child, all these sorts of things that people think their situation is unique, but a lot of times it's right out of a textbook, unfortunately, because people fit into these roles. Now, like I said before, I'm just an unemployable counselor. I'm not going to diagnose anything, and I won't. I'm just here to give some knowledge based off my experience in the work field and how I see pieces coming together as an outsider's point of view, because I really consider myself at this stage of the game as an outsider. And I kind of like that, right? I don't worry about what I say on here because I'm speaking truthfully. And I'm just giving my opinion of what's going on, right? And I do always scratch my head when people will watch for various reasons. And don't get me wrong, I want more people to watch this, as many as possible. But it's like, I hope they're taking something away from it, or, agreeing to some extent, or even just... I don't even know. I don't even know why people watch, to be honest with you. This is just my take on things that I've seen based off, again, 31 years, almost 32 years now in the workforce. So, I mean, I have a small group, and I like it that way, right? You don't have to be friends with everybody. You don't have to talk to everybody. Some people are more than willing just to get a piece out of it than actually just try to talk and have a conversation. And I find that difficult too. And I've been in that role as well, where it's like you just get so frustrated and you're just so upset and you're just so, I can't believe this is happening, that it's like you're flabbergasted, for a word. I don't get how this works, because what brought us here? Life happens whether we want to admit to it or not. But oftentimes those things are out of our control. And next thing you know, you're in a situation where it's not going like it was supposed to go. Okay, that's okay. There's blame that can go with that. But they don't need to wear that around their neck like the scarlet letter for all the world to see, right? When does the line go? When does it fade? It doesn't fade. The people holding the line won't let it. And maybe there's legitimate things there. Maybe there's stuff they need to get off their chest. Maybe there's stuff they want to talk about. That's okay. That's the way life works, right? But I also think too that some people I found in my career like it. They like that chaos. There has to be whatever perceived roadblocks that they have hit in their lives. Sometimes it's easier to have someone else to point to and say, you know what, if this guy wasn't born, or oh, you know what? Oh, that girl at the store gave me the wrong change. If she wouldn't have done that. Oh, if only I wouldn't have bought that slush. There's always something that caused that situation, but absolves them of guilt. And like I said, I'm not unattached from that. We've all been in situations where we'd rather not be at fault. But the difference I find with some folks that might exhibit some narcissistic tendencies, there's no way out of it unless you kneel or, you have to acknowledge how right I was over you. That's how this gets better. And I never understood that because I've seen it with clients, like especially the addicted clients, right? Like if you're, if you're abusing drugs, whatever, I'm talking street drugs, prescription drugs, doesn't matter. I think if you're hiding behind that to cope, there has to be a reason why you need that to cope. And to me, it's like if you're not looking at that, what the reason is, then you're never going to improve. You're just going to be in that cycle. Maybe you're upset about life. Maybe you're upset about choices made. I know I made a few choices I wish I wish I didn't do. But, this just reminds me that I'm not always as smart as I think I am. That was a tough lesson to learn, and believe me, I'm still learning it, right? That's a tough thing to overcome. And I find, unless you're willing to actually acknowledge that there's the issue there and work with that issue, then you can do something about it. But when you can't, and then it's just someone just waiting for the next shoe to drop, that's a larger indicator there. Now, I'm not saying that's narcissism. I'm just saying that we all have been in situations in our life, maybe with someone we worked with, where it's like, it's always negative. It's always, oh my God. And it's not like anxiety. It's like, well, you can't do this because I won't allow it. Well, number one, who are you? And number two, who cares? At the end of the day, who cares? What piece of that pie is the poison piece that nobody should eat? But everyone can eat everything else. But I'll tell you which piece to eat. Right? Chances are you'll feed that guy the poison piece. Right? Anyways. I find narcissism to be fascinating. Machiavellianism is also named after Machiavelli, who was a politically shrewd and somewhat morally ambiguous character from, I believe, the 18th century. Right? There's always these situations that will come up and arise that challenge us to look beyond the scope of ourselves. And I think too, maybe it's guilt. I don't know. Could be trauma. Everybody has trauma in some form, right? There's good trauma and there's bad trauma. It's like, but everybody has trauma. Okay, I'm not getting into trauma about that. But again, like I said, if things have happened and it's 30 years later that you're still obsessing about or whatever, right? Oh, if only I would have went to Dallas, Texas that day in 1963, Kennedy would still be here, right? Okay. All right. I don't know what I would have done to stop that. Chances are I'd be eating cotton candy, right? It wouldn't change that tragedy. And I think a lot of the times we get hung up on things like that. Now, I use the Kennedy example just because it's kind of, it's ridiculous. But how many times has there been like someone dies or someone gets sick or people need help and not everyone is willing to do that? Sometimes guilt comes out after that. And I think that drives a lot of the behavior. There's something putting coal in that furnace to keep that train running on that track. And I think a lot of the times it's driven by what's ever driving us not to acknowledge it as well. Because, and this goes back to some of the narcissistic traits, if you acknowledge it, it's admitting fault. And if you can't admit fault, then most certainly you're not going to acknowledge what the coal is burning in that engine. Are you? No, you're not. I'm not above that. I've had situations in my life where I wish I handled it differently. But as I've gotten older, I've realized I'm not the only one. Right? There's lots of people out there that have had similar situations where it's not always cut and dry. Some people need to be held up as the pinnacle of all things good in the world. And some people don't. The older I get, I'm content with not being in that, I'm not being held up. Right? It's like doing a show, like doing something like this, talking to you guys like it is. I'm expressing my view of a situation. I'm not knocking anyone. I'm just telling you what I think. But yet, I'm sure there's people out there that think I probably am, which I find kind of ridiculous, to be honest with you. And grow up is kind of like what I'm thinking, right? But who am I to judge those people? And if anything, I feel for them because they must be stuck. Like, we've all been stuck, man. I'm trying to get unstuck on a few situations myself. But if you're stuck and unable to move through the process, then nothing's going to change. Nothing. And no one should live their life like that. Right? Especially if they're self-medicating or self-medicating, right? I worked in the health field for a long time, and I saw a lot of different programs designed like around the medical model for treatment of different things. And I'm not disparaging anything of those because they have value. They all have value. But I think sometimes with some doctors, they get kind of almost trapped where they're giving prescriptions out, they're doing things, and it's just, and there's no other way around it because the person doesn't want to do anything else but that. And sometimes they don't want to be like, look, this has to happen for this to happen. It's easier just to write a prescription and let them go. And I get that. I've dealt with a lot of clients where it's been like, okay, you're here to get your kids back, but you're not doing anything to get your kids back. I can't sign this. That doesn't end well. People don't like that. Because then it's like, well, who are you to tell me what to do, blah, blah, blah. And it's just sometimes the fight isn't worth it. And it's the same with friends, the same with coworkers. Hell, it's even the same with family, right? You got to do what you got to do. And as I said before in these videos, you got to do what you got to do to make sure you make it out okay. Because you matter in all this. And you got to think about what you're doing. Like, I know in my life, I've had a couple of things happen that I consider life-altering experiences, right? Whether it's people passing away or circumstances that happen, when you're a teenager. Maybe it's quitting school, right? Things happen for a reason. And sometimes you just got to do what you need to do to make it through there alive. And that's your decision and yours alone. Just like now, right? Regardless of the situation, you got to do what's best for you. And honestly, fuck everybody else. Because they're not going to get it. Because they're not looking at it through your lens. It's the same with, again, going back to narcissism and those kind of traits. They're not going to see any other side of it. Right? I know, man. Mando's growling. He isn't like this kind of chat either. But I think it's something a lot of people hear because I've heard a lot about relationships over the last week. And a lot of people have messaged me and said, dude, this is what's going on. Mando, it's okay. It's just us here. Right? Come here. Maybe they're threatening your dog. Who knows, right? But I mean, like, people are finicky. A lot of times they'll put blinders on, especially when it suits their agenda and what they want. It's easier to vilify other people than take responsibility of your own. That's a lesson, man. People learn hard oftentimes. It's never fun to be in a situation where people that weren't there, but yet pretend they were, just to knock you. And I often wonder about that. And there could be lots of different things with that, right? But I think too, like, what is it? Is it guilt? Is it trauma? Resentment? Fear? Oh my gosh, if this is proven right, my world is over. Why? People are wrong all the time. It's our view of it that make it. And, I struggle around the holidays. I always have, right? Because for me, it's... I'm not good at pretending anymore with things. If you've been watching this channel, I think you get that. I've had relationships that didn't work. I've had, jobs that didn't work. And I can see where maybe my beliefs or my attitudes or the way I conducted myself probably had a hand in that. But I also see where I've tried to rectify situations as well. And I mean, like, if you're hearing the whole conversation, you're sitting there waiting for the other person to finish so you can tell them why you're wrong, why they're wrong and you're right. It kind of goes to my point. There's no collaboration. And some people you just got to walk away from because, like I said, at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for you. Not everything works out. There's not a bow on everything, right? Sometimes people watch this show just to get mad at things they're taking out of what I'm saying. I find that kind of humorous because I try hard to be open to everybody here. Invite comments on there, so please leave a comment if you disagree. But I also know that there's a lot of different factors that can come into play that shapes people's view into who they are today. And like I said, man, with children of alcoholics, like I said, you always have a hero, you always have a scapegoat, you always have a mascot, you got a lost child, you got like I said, the hero or the overachiever, right? You got all these things going in whether subconsciously or whether you wanted to or not, people fit into categories. And if no one's willing to work on that, then it just stays that way. Or if someone in that work environment says, screw you, I'm done, that destroys the narrative. So it usually amps up the rhetoric and the propaganda, right? Because then that person really is the devil and doing all this stuff and it's been like this for years and blah, 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 right? I've seen that in workplaces. It's not fun. And the people doing it, I had the same question to them, like, what are you getting out of this? You get vindicated that other people think this guy's an asshole now because you don't like what they did or who they are? I've been in sessions where people have been disciplined over that kind of stuff. Because no one should have to go to work or anywhere and have to be subjected to that, right? It's like... It's weird. If you're sitting there just rubbing your hands together waiting for the next time you see someone so you can give them a real good going over, that's like, why? That's almost laughable. Right? Like, seriously. Right? Narcissistic tendencies have a way to really come out, and again, it comes back because hurt people is what CM Punk said, and I believe that to be true. Okay, a lot of times, or sometimes people are so stressed they're doing all this stuff that if things fall apart, and someone feels they got to swoop in and do that, they're not doing it because it's needed. They're doing it because, oh look, you fucked up. I'm here to take this over from you. It's a big difference between things needing assistance and someone reframing it as that. Right? It's all about our view of self. For me to be this awesome, you got to be horrible. So it doesn't matter what happens. You could cure cancer, right? It's not going to matter because I need to be right more than you need acknowledgement for what you did, right? So when you're dealing with people like that in the workplace, go through your conflict resolution steps. One thing I've noticed is that when that happens and you confront those individuals, they don't like it because it's challenging their worldview. And what can they say? There's two sides to every story. So I'm not saying that some of the things that happen, some of it might be true. But it gets beaten to the point of being unrecognizable to fit someone else's narrative on why whatever it is you're doing is wrong and should be punished, right? No positives at all. Something minor happens, it's like, oh my gosh, right? You know, get the pitchforks and torches. We're burning down some houses, right? Everything jumps to the extreme, to the nth degree every time. There's no slow buildup, right? And it's even worse if people are medicating them as well, right? Because, you know, like I said, the COA stuff, oftentimes people, if they're raised like, you know, an environment that has a lot of addiction in it, they'll take that on themselves, they'll normalize it, and it becomes part of the function where if they don't have that, they can't function. Instead of working on the root issue, maybe that involves counseling or psychotherapy or something to work on so that they don't carry such hatred in their heart all the time. Because that's the killer, man. You know, I don't know too many people that are so angry all the time that live to they're like 100 years old. Okay? Like, enjoy your families. Enjoy whatever it is you're doing. Sculpting. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, find something you like and enjoy it and take care of yourself before it's too late. So I'll tell you, the people you're mad about, I don't think they give a shit. I really went all over the map here. But I feel it's necessary because if you pull the strings together on this design I've done, you'll see that it all connects, right? Our view of self. I'm going to take out the word narcissism, right? Because I don't want people to get hung up on that thinking I'm saying people are narcissists. They're not. Just like codependency, we all loop over and we all have the different types of behavior that come from these different things. Okay? Even this, man, I got, you know, if I have some opportunities coming up that's still going to allow me to do this the way I've been doing it. And that's just awesome because I'm not stopping this, right? You know, so I mean, and it goes back. If you're watching this because you hate it, well, first, thank you for watching. I appreciate the subscription. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, right? But it hits the point where it's just like you're only punishing yourself then. Because I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, I hope these people who hate my show watched it today. No, I'm thinking, I hope they tell their friends. I hope they hate watch because then I'll get more subscribers out of it. So it'll work out fairly well, right? Not everything revolves around yourself. And that's where the narcissism, the narcissistic traits of a personality come out. Because it doesn't matter what happens. It's all about you. Someone did you wrong years ago. And it put your life on this trajectory that's never recovered, right? I am not in the same spot I was now that I was 10 years ago. Am I happier? Yeah, I am. Do I have as much? Nope. No, I don't, right? But I also know that was on me. Because like I said, when I was younger, I had an ego. Who didn't, right? When you quit school at 16, right? Get a job and work, right? Then you go back to school, you write your GED, you go in, you take your chemical dependency, as it was called, and get your addictions counseling diploma. Then you go on later, and I got a degree in justice, plus a ton of other trainings and stuff that I have I'm not bragging. I'm saying is I fucked up and I made mistakes, but I try to rectify those as they go. But you hit a point on that line where you just be like, you know what, man, I'm doing this for me. And, and I think that's the stance everybody should take. Because, why be subservient to someone else's idea of what should be happening than just live your own idea? It's a lot easier that way, right? And I'm only telling you guys that a little bit of my life because I realize I don't share much about my life, but I consider, I got my kids and I got my mom. I got my dog. That's my circle. So for me, what influences that? I get mad too at things, right? We all have trouble with when relationships end, it's always difficult. But we got to work on ourselves and move on. Otherwise, we're never going to move on from that point. And then it's always going to be the same. Always. And why? It doesn't have to be. It's an unconscious choice. Once you wake up and you see that, no, we can make a choice here, then it changes the playing field. And all of a sudden, you need to be even much, much worse, right? You know what I mean? Again, it goes back, man. Watch Primal Fear, Ed Norton and Richard Gere. It's a good movie about a kid who, two personalities. It's good. It's a good watch. But you watch him, and and even in interviews, you see where he thinks he's the best, and he comes across that way. But then you got Bruce Willis, who probably was the best in those roles, doesn't come across that way. He's a guy you don't want fighting with you. Instead of thinking halfway through, I'm going to push this guy down a well. Right? There's a difference there. You can deal with cocky. You may not like it, but you can laugh at it. You can deal with it. You can't deal with arrogance. And when you're constantly being browbeat over something that happened years ago, number one, why? Why? Right? Anyways. Food for thought tonight on the Unemployable Counselor. And I just want to point out that I think that everyone has a lot to offer in this world. Just we get hung up with our own shit, and we can't come out of it. We just can't. And so we lash out, and we got to make everyone else suffer, or make everyone else be the bad guy to make us the good guy. But at the end of the day, you end up just having two bad guys. People should just live their lives and do what they can. Especially this time of year, like I said, man. I'm telling a couple of friends that have had some really horrible relationships, right? I have had bad relationships too. But these ones have been really bad around the holidays. It's impacted people seeing their kids. It's impacted all these things. And it's not the kids' fault, right? But people get stuck. And they don't want to find a way out. They just need everyone to think that other person is the devil. Like I said, it doesn't solve anything. It just makes everybody look bad. I said this before in a video, a short one, about if you're saying things like, I'm here for the children. I'm here for the animals. I'm here for the good grace of all that's holy. It doesn't do what you think it does. Self-servingness only goes so far. And then people roll their eyes when you talk because they're tired of hearing it. Okay? You can only run around and browbeat people so long before people just stop tuning you out or just let you finish. Believe me, I have a YouTube channel. I know what it's like to have people tune me out, right? But that's it. I don't have too much else to say. This is really off the cuff. I was going to go a little more technical tonight. I'm starting to rely on the laptop a little bit more because I want to make sure what I'm saying is accurate. And I also want you guys to know that a lot of this is my opinion and my view. So I'm not a doctor, right? I know lots of people that like to pretend they're doctors, right? But no one's a doctor, right? I know a little bit about a little bit. but not enough. I don't diagnose. I won't treat you. If you call me and give me your symptoms, I can't write you a prescription. All those sorts of things are just off the table. This is just me, a guy with his dog and a rooster on the wall, and a Habs fan, right? Just talking about how I view things from what people have said to me and from what I've experienced in my work environments, and as a guy who's worked since he left school. So, and I know there's a lot of people out there have that too, where they just keep plugging along, and maybe they have a lot of things happen. Maybe there's, that iceberg that when you're born, wherever, there's an iceberg, chunks break off and they drift apart. That's just the way it goes, man. You don't live with your kids till they're 40 or 50. Just like there reaches a point where you just stop taking shit off people. And that's okay. The people trying to put the shit on you aren't going to like it. But if they're putting shit on you, why do you want them around anyway? Right? It's just how I view it. That was the people under the stairs. I don't know if you heard that. But like I said, man, life's too short and we're all in this together. So it doesn't hurt to be kind to people. And look, and if you're struggling that much, there is no shame in reaching out. Everyone should talk to a counselor at some point in their lives. It'll help you. Right? Things are tough to overcome, and people can easily get stuck and not even see it. That's my view. My view is that it doesn't have to be like this. I think after a while, people get so accustomed to the chaos and the animosity in that kind of thought process that they just can't give it up. It's got to be like this, because then it's like saying everything that they've done. If I'm doing that and I can see the thought process, it's like, well, no, if I admit to this, then it basically proves them right and me wrong for all these years or whatever the hell it is. It's like, if you're that worried about what people think about you, then that's a whole other issue. Because why? What does it matter what people think? The only thing people are going to think is what you tell them to think. And if you're telling a narrative that isn't necessarily true, then of course you're going to be worried that the truth might come out, because it's not going to make you look very good. That's why I really adopted a policy of I'm not doing that stuff anymore. Whether you're married or whether you're in, whatever relationships you've had, there's always the need to compromise, or maybe you're the one that always has to make the peace. Why? Why? As I said earlier a couple times now, at the end of the day, you're only accountable for you. And if you stand up and you're accountable and you try to do the right thing, then what do you have to worry about? I don't tell many stories about my family, but I'll say this about my dad. My dad already said that, look, doesn't matter what religion a guy is. Doesn't matter what his beliefs are. As long as he's honest, he's kind to people and treats them good, what do they have to worry about? And when I was younger, I just thought, you old man, you're crazy. But as I got older, I realized that, and keep in mind, I love my dad. We all had our flaws, right? He was no different. He was just a guy, right? Just like my kids are seeing, I'm just a guy. I make mistakes, right? I try to make amends. But there comes a point where you just got to live your life. If people don't like what you're doing or how you're living it, well, that's really up to them. That's really their problem, isn't it? Maybe a good title for this would be The Tangled Webs We Weave. That'd be pretty good, right? I'm trying to squeeze Something Wicked This Way Comes into one. It's really good. That was a good book, but it's an even better movie with Jonathan Pryce and Jason Robards from, I think, 1982. Precursor to movies like Needful Things or The Devil Comes to Castle Rock. It's a Stephen King novel. It's very good, but the movie had Ed Harris in it, and Max von Sydow as the devil, and you can't beat that. I don't know if these videos are striking a chord with anyone. I don't know if I'm not going to go as far as say if they're helping anybody, because it's not why I'm doing this, to be honest with you. I'm doing this because this is stuff that I find interesting, and it's stuff that I think is funny and cool, how you can connect those dots on things that don't always seem connectable. But when you're far enough out of a situation, or you step back far enough where you can kind of see, it's like going outside the city limits and looking in the city, and you see all of it in its glory and its beauty. And when you get closer to it, you can kind of see some of the, maybe the ugliness, some of the social stuff that we talk about. But for a brief moment, when you're looking at it, you can see why people are drawn to it. And I think that gets lost. And I think a lot of things get lost because of that. Like, man, I think there's so many times I came so close to like going to like losing my mind, or you know what I mean? Or just like having those struggles. And I think about the stuff that's kind of grounded me and kept me together. And it's always something different, and they always change. But I mean, when it comes to, you know, when it comes to like, you know, I always found it weird with people if they, when people are upset with you, they usually take shots, right? And doing this thing here, I don't take shots at anybody, because why would I? And that's just dumb, especially on something like this. If I had something I was going to say to you that bad, I would call you and probably say it to you, you know? But I think we just get so hung up in this being, you know, in people being wrong or bad, that doesn't matter what is said, you're going to take negative connotations out of it. And I feel bad for those folks, because you're missing the beauty. Okay, Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. At the beginning of the movie, it showed he was a teacher, right? Because he was teaching, you know, kung fu, or not kung fu. Oh, I can't remember what he calls it now. Oh, it's the timer. That's my Bruce Lee wrong information alert. He goes, it is like a finger pointing to the moon. And then it shows the kid looking at the finger. So he slaps in the head and he goes, if you concentrate on the finger, you will miss out on all that heavenly glory. That's what it is. People are focusing on the wrong things, and they can't move on from it. And then it feeds into what looks like narcissistic personality traits, right? Codependency, COA type stuff, as we mentioned, plus a whole host of other things. So I didn't break down narcissistic personality disorder, and I won't in this video, because like I said, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just an unemployable counselor, but I will tell you how I see those things that interfere with everybody else. And I've had spots too where you think, oh man, I'm too good for this, right? And I think back, like I said, about 10 years ago, right? I had a whole different life. And I'm looking for, aha, right? And then life has a way of reaching up and giving you a good smack, and being like, you need to come back to earth, my friend, right? And then you get into situations where you do the right thing and it doesn't work. I can honestly say, I've had a few experiences in my life in the past 20 years where that's been the case, where you think you're doing what's right and it turns out no one was concerned with what was right. They wanted what was easy and what was good for them. And I refuse to work like that and to be like that anymore. So hence this channel, because I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking the same. And the way things have been going, it looks like I bet correctly. But I'm going to suggest to you guys, subscribe if you haven't. Like I said, even the ones who hate watching, make a party out of it. Bring your friends over. Hate watch as a group, right? That's always fun. Just make sure they all subscribe. And we're all in this together. So do what you need to do to be well, healthy, and happy. And just be kind to each other, man, especially animals. Animals are awesome. Especially my dog, Mando, he's pretty awesome. And yeah, at the end of the day, you're responsible for you and nobody else. And if people are trying to put you in a corner you don't want to be in, guess what? You don't have to be in that corner. Okay. Wow, 45 minutes. I really rambled on this one. If you made it this far, thank you. Go get a drink or an IV, because I'm pretty sure you're probably dehydrated. And we'll do another one soon. Going back to the roots with a long-winded chat about narcissism, Bruce Lee, and the world we live in has to be one that we want to live in. So do what you need to do for you. Take care and call your parents. Give them a hug or a kiss. They're not going to be around forever. And don't be overcome by pettiness. Okay? You got something to say it. Be done with it. Live your lives. And good luck to all of you out there. I'll get off the high horse now, and I'm going to go to bed. So for me, Mando, the rooster, take care of yourselves.